are now live. I feel ready. Oh, so ready. Yes, I do feel ready. I am Ryan Erickson here. This is Riffing with Ryan, a show that I do occasionally and hopefully more and more often now that I have stuff and available time in my life. Today, I am here with a new friend and someone who I think is a kindred spirit in the vein of organizational musicianship and my gig and the music of work and all that stuff. His name is Robert Snyder, and I am going to minimize myself and invite Robert to the screen. Hello, Robert.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning to you. Yes, we are in the East Coast of the United States, or Eastern of the United States. So it was 10:15 for me, 9:15 for you. And it is whenever time it is for whomever's out there watching us at this point. So to start, I guess I'll start. Maybe I feel like it. You were talking before we went live about how you kind of wandered into my space and that you encountered me through a certain path. If you want to go through that, maybe that will lead us to where it led us before, and maybe it will lead us to where it didn't. And also maybe a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do to those who may not know you yet.
Absolutely. So I believe, Ryan, about 6 months ago, I was in an event with IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis, Orange County chapter. And one of the board members, Susan, I'm not sure if that event I was speaking or if I was just in the audience, but she mentioned a gentleman to me by the name of Al Shalloway. So I looked up Mr. Shalloway, and he was doing a LinkedIn Live event either that day, that hour, that week, and joined that LinkedIn, was in the audience, found you. You were talking about music at the time, and I thought, I got to hook up with this guy. We need to talk music. So I've been listening to you and Neil's for, I don't know, dozens or maybe a dozen episodes of your own show, and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, admire what you guys are doing.
Beta Codex live with me and Neil's flagging every once in a while. So, okay. Yes, please.
Yeah. So that's the path that led me to you. So my jam, to introduce myself to your audience, is I describe my 30-year career as the most generic IT consultant you can conceive. So big firms, small firms, consulting side, client side. I've been a developer, database administrator, business analyst, project manager, change manager, the whole SDLC. Went back from the MBA, pivoted toward more business and sales facing roles. My last corporate gig was 7 years in a sales innovation role. I'll call it adjacent to the Salesforce.com team. So for the past few years, I've been writing. I drew some conclusions about 5 to 7 years ago. I had attended a webinar entitled "Do You Have a Book in You?" subtitled "You Can't Take It With You." Yeah. So typically when we hear that phrase, "You can't take it with you," we're talking about money. And these two young 30-something female authors were talking about our wisdom. So their challenge to the audience was, hey, if you got something to say, you need to get on it now. You need to get on that book. So I did. So I finished 2 books so far. I have a third that I expect to publish next year. And so the premise of the book, I'll try to hit my personal pause button here, is that I see those 2.5 software-centric methodologies. And the easy conclusion is, what makes innovation teamwork difficult? It's not the software, it's us, how we interact, govern each other, collaborate, or stink at collaborating. So formulating a people-centric methodology should not make anyone's head explode. And we've got 2 decades of experience and lessons learned to really anticipate the dysfunction, anticipate the narcissism, the poor accountability. There's a pattern in the problem. So my books and my public speaking aim to convert organizations who are sufficiently exasperated with their current methodology, whatever and it's always hybrid, right? No one's purely waterfall, no one's purely agile. Everyone is hybrid. Okay, so but if for companies who are sufficiently exasperated with this software centricity, then I think that they would benefit from what I have to say and what I have to write.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, we already have the first comment based on what you said from someone in your domain, Thea.
Oh, nice.
So,
Thea and I met through IIBA. Thea, congratulations on your new position in your chapter. And Thea does a lot of public speaking herself. So I consider Thea an ally and an early adopter.
So innovating with elegance, maybe I would say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is I kind of I drank the Kool-Aid from that same well, and maybe in a different spring, about if you have something you want to say to the world that's important, that you say it, put it in some kind of artifact, and get out there and sing the song, read from the lead sheet that are the ideas of your life. And so that's that whole idea of that there is musicality to how people interact in small teams, large teams, organizations of organizations, communities, and that there is a musicality to that you hear the music. And also, well, that means that each of us who are actors in that system, we are musicians in a way. And so our musicianship, it plays out in the different ensembles we have, and in the different pieces of music and the sections that interact together to produce this melody and this type. So there's a lot of rich metaphor in there that I just, it hit me so hard because of my background as a jazz musician, and then in a similarly generic IT career, maybe not as many roles as you, but there's I think a lot of synergy, and I think you mentioned earlier congruence between what you're talking about in different software development methodologies, and that we are kind of both in the software world. I'm endeavoring maybe to be a little bit beyond it, but Agile, waterfall, these are different ways of, one might say, either orchestrating or improvising or innovating and creating. So I think that's one of the ties that binds us. I think there are many. And if so, let me stop there. So there's a bit of where you're coming from, where I'm coming from. How about the musical piece for you? How does this idea of musicianship and music and musical collaboration, how does that relate to what you talk about and what inspired you to put your ideas into the Innovation Elegance book?
So in a word, it's imitation. Imitating the collaborative culture traits of a symphony or a choir, so that we're pleasing to the audience and we don't sound like a bunch of sixth graders playing French horn for the first time. I think a symphony, in no particular order, a symphony is an exhibit of all of us are something bigger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yes, it might be humbling to be a cog, to be one of 40 instruments. And so all of us have to decide, do we have the self-esteem and the humility to be part of something bigger than ourselves? Blend, listen, balance, show up for your team members, have a common understanding and expectation of what we are working toward. That is opening night, or for an innovation team, it's a go live event. And so again, I could go on for 5 minutes, Ryan, about just the culture traits of a music ensemble. Could be vocal, could be instrumental. I think there's a time and place for a symphony that is so well rehearsed that it's hard. A dance director of mine used to tell us, don't practice the routine until you get it right. Practice the routine until it's hard to get it wrong. So a symphony can also maintain that, Or when an ensemble is working in a fog, purposely or not, well then, okay, maybe the ensemble does resemble a jam session, and then we are improvising. There are still rules with improvising, and we could go into the premise of yes and etc. and talk about the culture traits of improv. But to bring it back to music, I just think that the culture traits of a symphony, when you think of the repeatability, the scale, recordings, building a portfolio of experiences, so that the listeners to music, how do they appreciate the collaboration again and again? It's so easy that they just push play, and that is automation, that is profitability. And so that's another, I think, it's another culture trait of music ensembles that businesses don't take advantage of enough.
So that almost says that the bit about automation is kind of, I wonder, I want to dig into that a bit more. When you're saying that, how would you maybe unpack that a little bit in terms of that?
So when I was a kid, my mom was into this opera singer named Luciano Pavarotti. And I don't think in those days we, the family, could afford going to see Luciano Pavarotti in person. So there's a certain price tag associated with the live performance, and there's a different price tag for still appreciating his talent on, God forbid, a cassette. How to say you're 50 without saying you're 50. So
at least you're not talking about a wax cylinder.
So I think that's an example of automation. And let's not apologize for automation, because it reduces the marginal cost for the audience. Why did I write a book? To reduce, arguably minimize, the marginal cost for my target audience to consume what I'm putting out. Because consulting work, live speaking, etc., it's more laborious, it's time consuming, it's more expensive for someone. Even if it's not me, it's more expensive for someone. And so a book is my attempt to automate my thoughts, and minimize the cost and the laboriousness for my audience, so they can consume it on their terms.
Right.
Like a recording, like a music recording, right?
I was just going to say, it's okay. Here's the tune. I've written the tune. I've rehearsed the tune. I've arranged the tune. It is in this way. Maybe I've hired some players to help play these parts in this song and all the stuff that you've taken the time with intent to produce an artifact that says, here's Innovation Elegance. And this is the Innovation Elegance album, right? And so there's the automation and of that. I get it, in that the marginal cost of not going to not having to pay, as I did, whatever, hundreds of dollars to see Peter Gabriel live in concert in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, I could have, and I did buy each of those. Listen to each of the songs in sequence, so I knew what they are. But the experience of you is valuable, and as we see more and more automation, that we can have more and more tools to automate what we do in the AI range, the value of what we're doing now is just improvisational conversation about what you've all saying, what you have inside of you, what you are capable of saying. You've automated that into the book, and now it can come out, and we can tease that and tag it in different ways. So the value of live performance versus the value of distributable static content, and I think that's an interesting place to go, because it's going to get easier and easier to distribute static content and to create static content that may not seem so static. So yeah. Okay, so warning to you, not a warning to those of you who've seen me before. I will tangentialize randomly, and we will end up places where we have no idea how we got there or how we will get back, or if we will get back. So
I don't believe in mistakes. Wherever we go is the right, it's the right path. Amen.
And this is why I love open space technology so much. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, as it is, and it has contextually for me in life over the past couple months and years about what's happened here. So, so innovation in general. What was it? Why is innovation important to you? And why was that as opposed to developing better software or whatever, helping managers manage better? Why innovation? Why does that matter?
So I believe innovation is beneficial because it improves our standard of living. Pick a century in human history, and trying to do things better, faster, with I think there are how many D's are there? So technology helps us with the 8 D's, and I'm not sure how well I'm gonna get all D's, but innovation and technology help us with whatever is dull, dirty, dangerous, demeaning. And in my book, I get all 8 repeatedly, but dull, demeaning, dirty, dangerous. That is why we innovate, is to improve the human experience. Because and we could think about the opposite. Would we ever innovate something and then say, "Oh, no, that was a bad idea. Let's." I mean, the creative destruction is still purposeful and moving in the right direction. But anyway, that's my attempt to be succinct with your question. Why do humans innovate? I mean, we could go into and I may have already answered the question. Why am I passionate about improving innovation teamwork? Is because I see the pain. I'm experiencing the pain. I'm observing the pain. I'm listening to the pain. There is a lot of exasperation out there. And I don't think we have to accept it. There's that acronym VUCA: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. I have plenty of people telling me we need to surrender to VUCA. I violently disagree. We absolutely do not need to surrender to the chaos, the cruelty. We don't need to surrender to VUCA because we have the tools, we have the metaphors, we have the inspiration, we have the language. We just need to think harder about how to orchestrate. What is the right discipline? What is the right empathy? What are the right habits? So
the word right is really poking at me. There's a right way and a wrong way, and that I would maybe prefer to go. And I think I also want to get into the VUCA thing, because I think we've talked about that a little bit. That I hope I didn't interrupt you too much here, but I think each situation there are patterns that are consistent among human interactions. I think we get that at the macro level. We start there. People collaborating together to produce value for a group of other people who have a need that we can continue to meet their need by being together. So that system of interactions has, over time, as technological innovations have happened, globalization, global markets, and the move from factory goods to knowledge work and all this kind of stuff, that creates more volatility, more uncertainty, more ambiguity, and definitely more complexity. That just is. See, and that just is, and that those complexities, I feel, and please, we don't have to agree, as you might know someone I say that with. We don't have to agree, but I think VUCA is, because I don't think that there is a steady state of non-VUCA. I think VUCA is the steady state. We have evolved in our technological capabilities, in our social system. Some would say we've progressed, some would say we've regressed. That those four elements, VUCA is real, VUCA is, and that different strains of that can be addressed in different ways. Not a right way, not a wrong way, but they are different ways for each ensemble and each group, each context, because of the wonderful things we do. So an orchestra. So here's the musical example. So an orchestra faces is in a different kind of VUCA than is a country band who is a touring band, or then is a pop musician who is attempting to entertain an audience, then is a jazz group that is, so all of these VUCAs are different flavors of VUCA, and that require different ways of being and different practices to address those VUCAs. Like leaderships, there's no one leadership, there are many leaderships, and this is a beta concept we can talk about. So I paused you at VUCA, and there's no right way. There's no right way to address VUCA because VUCA is.
So I have a playful metaphor that I'm going to try to disagree. And I don't think I've voiced this out loud, so it's a test. There's a joke. I don't know if this joke is geographically dependent or not, but I'll pick on Illinois. Pick on Chicago. There are only 2 seasons in Chicago. Winter and road construction. So why is that relevant to VUCA? It's because road construction is a form of innovation, right? Why are we constantly, why are governments, why are humans constantly building, rebuilding, fixing things? Again, it's all to reduce marginal cost. And improving roads, buses, trains, public transportation to reduce marginal cost of traffic, which we have traffic in our innovation teams as well. That stuff is not free, and we just have to decide: do we have the density? Do we have enough density to justify sidewalks, stoplights, a left turn lane, buses, trains? So there's no wrong answer, but being thoughtless or mindless about your cost profile is a problem. So back to road construction. Road construction is a steady state. So for an orchestra, for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, there's a steady state, and it's putting out a show every quarter, every season, etc. So I believe that we can apply those metaphors of the steady state to building new stuff. And so one major framework in my books and in my speaking is reimagining the RACI framework. So these 4 adjectives: responsible, accountable, consulted, and they've been around for a couple decades. They've had their chance to improve project success rates, improve the employee experience, etc. So I strongly believe the RACI framework is a false sense of governance. But it came close. And so I think you might remember in a previous conversation where I landed through my operations class in business school, through my work at Motorola and in supply chain and operations, I landed on this metaphor of a factory, a flow. And with Niels earlier this morning, we were, bantering on LinkedIn about this concept of an agreement factory. Right? Teams agree on blah, then they agree on blah, and there's a rational sequence of agreements that an innovation team has. Where do these agreements reside? Well, by process of elimination, they should not reside in our head. One person's head, 10 people's head. And then another place they should not reside is buried in someone's email.
So visibility, or there's this term for that. Legibility. That was okay. So
the third communication channel is, drum roll, God forbid, structured documentation.
But not comprehensive, but structured.
Right. Well, and not comprehensive. It's just like you're not going to go into a city and build a comprehensive train system. You're going to build enough train stations and train lines to justify reducing the marginal cost that you can justify the increased upfront cost. And so
And with a set of reasonable assumptions about growth based on the current, whatever. Okay, so those are the conversations that need to happen when that kind of intent is realized. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the place that these agreements need to reside, again, it's structured documentation. Why is structured documentation so unpopular? High upfront cost. Why is benefiting from structured documentation so popular? Low marginal cost for information sharing, onboarding, the next phase of collaboration. So I understand why structured documentation has fallen out of favor. You just have to pick your cost profile and own your cost profile. I love the cliche, you can ignore the laws of gravity, but the laws of gravity do not ignore you. Well, you can a team can ignore the laws of marginal cost. But the laws of marginal cost do not ignore you, your innovation team, your city. There are cities in the US that have, in my opinion, my conclusion is they have neglected public transportation. And they are
Charlotte.
And so they own their cost profile, and they are experiencing literal traffic jams. So in our teams, I believe too many innovation teams are experiencing communication traffic jams. And so that's the problem. To bring it back to music, I'm trying to convert communication traffic jams in the form of meeting gridlock, email overload, and I'm trying to convert that into communication symphonies and the 5 verbs, reimagining the RACI framework, but instead governing whatever's worth managing, governing it with 5 verbs. And anything, I don't prohibit anything else. I would just claim, well, whatever that other stuff is, it's not worth documenting. It's low risk. It doesn't need to be, there's no collaboration involved. Well, then don't manage it, because it probably is just a chat. Step away from the keyboard. That work is not worth keystrokes. Do it at the pub. But so I'm trying to draw a thick line between, hey, innovation team, and again, back to, is there one way to solve VUCA? I believe that for a team that's doing the 5 verbs, for any innovation professional closing their eyes and saying, hey, I'm in this symphony of 5 verbs, then your work is transparent. It's collaborative. It's got a micro sponsor because someone is assigned approve. And then it's going to be shared with those who are not contributing, to avoid bureaucracy, that sort of thing. So it's a bold claim. It's an audacious claim. But to combat VUCA, I believe a team that is obsessed with the 5 verbs is shaping a culture of amazing discipline, amazing empathy for the next team,
and themselves and each other within that team. Very, very important.
Absolutely.
The primacy.
Yes. Meetings and emails are wonderful servants. They are horrible masters. And all I'm proposing is that organizations, like, I understand the addiction and the comfort zone of meetings. I get it. But they're in the front seat right now, and what's in the back seat is meeting minutes. Hey, Johnny, take notes. Be a scribe. So what we're doing is we're making documentation really unglamorous and almost insulting. Like, oh, Johnny will take notes. And all I'm proposing is just invert what's in the front seat with what's in the back seat. In the front seat, 5 verbs. What's in the back seat? Your meetings and your emails.
Yeah. That was a big riff. Lots of stuff in there. The verbs to me sound like components of a practice, right? And this is the idea that I'm borrowing from.
Rhythm and habits. Yes.
Right. So there's our practices, the practices of how we interact, how we agree, when we consult, how are we going to be together? You and I working together on this team and the other 3 people that are here, do we respect each other's mastery? And assuming there are those basic assumptions, I assume your mastery, I respect your mastery, and I respect your human dignity and agency to disagree with me, and for us to have honest and open conversation about that, and say, well, this innovation, I don't agree with where you're going. Can you help me understand that? and I will consume that, digest it, and help you understand what that's not a fast process. And that's the music. There are these practices of, I'm thinking when you said verbs, this gets back to these practices of doings, the ways of doing that become a practice as a way of being, which I'm borrowing that term very specifically from a book by the late Peter Vale and a friend of mine, Dave Fearon, called Practice as a Way of Being, which is our practice of musicianship, right? Is what's our rhythm? Do we agree on the rhythm? Do we groove? Are we playing off the right song sheet? Are we in tune? Do we have technique? What is our who's our audience? Are we what is our interaction? How do so all of those things that become embedded in you as a musician as a result of in-depth training, that you train for your technique. You train, you rehearse, you think, you prepare, you rehearse, you perform, you have dress rehearsal and these kinds of things. Those are all metaphors of a practice of musicianship. And I think that's what comes up to me as the way of being is a practice of musicianship. And that these agreements, well, they're tacit when you are really in with somebody. We're in a quintet or a trio is the best, but up to a septet, that there have to be these tacit agreements of, you're going to come in this bar, you guys are going to rehearse, you're going to be, this is, but that, oh, don't do that. That's the tune we're playing. This is our arrangement. And we're going to improvise around the edges, and we're going to accept, we're going to sense and respond, that kind of bit that we're there. So
can I respond to that?
Oh, please do. I think I took it somewhere else again, but please respond.
So I'm gonna riff off the word embedded. One other term for that can be muscle memory. That is a form of automation. And so what I'm trying to do, one of the things I'm trying to accomplish in my book is stratify, separate what are the mechanics from the style. If I'm playing violin, there's technique and then there's expression. There are the fundamentals and then there's the flair. And distinguishing the two can ensure that we do the basics, the reading, writing, arithmetic. In the sport of basketball, the fundamentals are passing, dribbling, and shooting. And once we are brilliant at the basics, we're fabulous at the fundamentals, and we're magnificent at what needs to be muscle memory, then we can elevate our brain power to the creativity, to the positive surprises, to surprise and delight. But for any team that's still mired in the mechanics, I call it verb sprawl, because a lot of teams have a task list with 20, 30, 40 different verbs. They have a project plan with 30 different verbs. You don't need that noise. You don't need that extraneous variability in your language. I believe there's a time and place for anyone's impressive vocabulary. A project plan is not that place. Right?
Ooh, that feels like you're talking to me.
So the project plan doesn't need to be, and it shouldn't be creative. What's creative is what's inside the project charter, what's inside the future state script that you're writing and rewriting an amazing story for your stakeholder, your customer. What's inside the process flow, what's inside that's where the creativity is. And one more point, and I'll hit my personal pause button again. This word predictive has a negative connotation here in 2024. But let's distinguish the word predictive from predictable. And you know what's predictable? For every project, a process is going to change. A data structure is going to change. If you're going to automate anything, code is going to change. And you're going to, so there are so many things that are predictable that teams need to reduce reinventing the wheel. And what is different from project to project to project is what is inside all of those assets, right? That's where the creativity is. But there's value in distinguishing the two, because too many organizations are reinventing the wheel. And so going back to a comment Niels made on LinkedIn earlier today, is he said, blah, 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 is consistently asking the wrong questions. Well, I believe that there absolutely is a straightforward way to propose, stabilize, and standardize the right questions for every innovation team. And then the answers to those questions is the documentation. And I'm not saying it's rigid, but I am saying it can be explicit. Go ahead.
This also comes to again, I'm going to throw an acknowledgement of Dan Mezek, and he talks about these 8 patterns of open business agility. And one of those patterns is explicit agreements. That's important to have explicit agreements about what is it we're doing, how we're doing it, procedures are okay. And this is me again, who disagrees with me. That doesn't matter, but procedures and processes that are explicit and designed produce consistent results. That we execute those processes in a rhythm to do the complicated work that can be done by technique and knowledge and all those things, that we can do it faster. We can do skunk funk, or we can do it like Michael Brecker, and that's, but the tune is the same, right? So we are agreeing to play a tune that has a specific set of notes there that we agree on, a specific set of chord changes that maybe we vary, but the basics are there. And that's okay. That's the score of the symphony. Beethoven's Fifth has not changed, right? It hasn't changed. But you talk about the style and the flair, that there's, that is the improvisation of the Western art musician, the standard symphonic musician, is that to be able to interpret and to really grow in interpretation, that multiple performances, and that putting different nuance in that a conductor who recognizes their role is just to be a facilitator of those interpretations, and to be this dynamic source of influence. And this is not because I can't control every person, but yeah. I
have 3 responses, but go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the Beta Codex way of talking about that, and what I've learned, kind of taking what you're saying and with that's about preparation, not planning. So I'm not necessarily, I don't have to plan to play. I mean, I kind of have to say, when is the performance going to happen of the Chicago Symphony? But the preparation of, I'm going to practice the part, I'm going to practice in section, and then we're going to come to rehearsal together. We're going to practice, we're going to prepare. And that is the same, I would say, with an innovation team, that our preparation of our daily practice, the daily work that we do, that we're doing within, we're doing Java and back in the day Spring, or now we're doing Angular, or we have to do this with this set of web services, and that this is our architecture. This is the symphony that we're playing, but the art happens around those constraints. As we embrace the constraints, we practice and prepare within them to be able to address and dance with the uncertainty and create beauty out of that uncertainty. That, I think, is the magic, and that's that innovation dance you do. So again, pause, and then back to how you wanted to come back to that.
So in no particular order, because I was madly taking notes, when you say the word explicit, the word unforgiving comes to mind. Right? There are times and places for teamwork to be forgiving and unforgiving, and let's not forget of how unforgiving is code. Right. So
it is absolute in its unforgiveness.
So upstream from that unforgiveness of code, a team has to decide how forgiving, how squishy is their stuff upstream going to be? Because a team that aims to retain a high level of squishiness, you're not going to be able to code. So you're not going to. Go ahead.
Again, I'll pause quick, but there's you wrap an API around this set of code here, right? If I'm going to interact with different pieces of code and different pieces, this is So I think that's the constraint, and the container is the API that you perform and create within, in a way.
Fair. Okay. So explicit is not rigid, right? They're not the same thing. Just because something is on paper, I think the ink can always be wet, because the next project is going to disrupt the current state. So just because something is explicit on paper does not mean is rigid, written in concrete. I just want to make that point, that many folks confuse, they blur the two to say, well, I don't want to write it down because it could change. Well, when you write it down, take the example of a restaurant menu. When a restaurant has a menu of 50 items, when it decides to change its menu, it now reduces the marginal cost to disrupt the status quo. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point about
I like
unforgiveness.
I like the restaurant example too, because I mean, just because I learned it through music doesn't mean that there aren't many different ways to enumerate or elaborate on that pattern. That the menu is one thing. Okay, we're going to write down the menu because we're going to for this period of time, we're going to charge this price for this entree. We need to order these ingredients. We prepare them in these ways because the chef de cuisine designed that dish. And maybe that dish changes slightly based on a consultation and a conversation. And again, depending on the people involved and their need for control and their need for status and all that kind of stuff, it will change in certain ways. But the menu on this day, the menu is the menu. There will be variations because we got some stinky fish or we got whatever. But the way the kitchen operates, there's a standard there. The way that the service is provided, there's standards there. But there's also so much improvisation in the way that the dishes carried to the table and then served, and then in the level of improvisation changes based on the role and responsibility. Say a front of house has this, back of house has this, and all of that stuff is that requires an awareness and a sense of respect for the mastery of each of those roles, depending and regardless of the level of complicatedness in those roles. So,
so can I react?
Well,
go ahead.
I guess this is on the keeping myself on theme. But explicit versus rigid versus unforgiveness in terms of documentation. That we're not talking about comprehensive upfront. Comprehensive documentation is in general universally wasteful in the vast majority of situations. So please,
I'm just promoting execute the 5 verbs for whatever is worth reducing marginal cost. It's like you only build a train system wherever it reduces marginal cost. In a small town of XYZ, you cannot justify a train system. I think it's the same thing with documentation. Some intersections cannot justify a left turn lane, a right turn lane, or an overpass. It's the same. It's all about the money. It's about the cost profile. It's about the density and the volume of traffic. So teams that have a low volume of innovation, you not only do you not need much documentation.
Are you taking volume as in amount or volume as in pace and frequency?
Either both. I'm being vague on purpose because so something you said. So back to the restaurant metaphor. Certain things are put on paper because they're worth formalizing those expectations to reduce the marginal cost of setting expectations. Now, when you talked about the style of presentation or the style of delivery to the table, a server walking toward a table, that stuff is not worth documenting, micromanaging, etc. So that is the flair, that is the style, and so again, it's another example of it's worthwhile to stratify and distinguish what is worth the mechanics, what is the mundane, what, and also documentation encourages simplification. Because when people say, this is too difficult to document, well, that should be a red flag. as in you're going to let yourself off the hook, and you're not going to be demanding of yourself, and you're going to let the expectations, diverging expectations, reside across X number of people.
It amplifies the
it amplifies VUCA.
It amplifies, all of that.
The fog, the squishiness, and it undermines automation. It raises your marginal cost and hurts your profitability.
And again, it invites a deeper analysis of what components is the marginal cost being maximized and optimized. There are. If we're talking, this came to me recently, just hearing you talked about this, the Lean RFS episode, the latest one with Ian Glenda that we did on the Beta Codex Live, was that there's this idea in a fast moving production environment that you have a large number of what we call the greens, which are easily repeatable, documentable, producible tasks that you can do. This is your 16th notes on IAT.
Amen. Yeah.
And that's, you can produce that 90 whatever percent of stuff you can really do. You can schedule around it. That's your constraint. But then there's these red components that are more unpredictable, that the grit will, if you try and standardize those pieces too much, you're going to create more. There's a word for it. This
it could
failure
be
demand.
Over-engineered.
Yeah, gold plating or whatever we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to dig down into the marginal. I mean, there's an aggregate marginal cost, of course, of just producing in general. But each of those costs, each of those components has a cost, and that you can again, you aggregate them to a certain point. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. That the Lean RFS, again, the book or the episode, I think it's a very interesting way of addressing that. And I'm thinking of that what you're talking about, it has an application possibly in software and what we're talking about, because the innovation, okay, so pause button. I like that. So it's your course now.
Okay, so one more lighthearted comment about a restaurant and the written menus. It's one thing for a restaurant to have a single paper menu at the table. It's interesting to think about, well, would it be overcomplicating it? Would it be over-engineering when a restaurant says, you know what, we need a separate drink menu. We need a separate dessert menu. Why would a restaurant choose to partition and bundle? That's an important word. Bundle these expectations and perceptions for its diners, its customers. So I think the word bundle is a neglected term because when an innovation team is thoughtless about the size of a bundle, you get yourself into trouble. When a bundle is too big, right, it'll get demonized as being labeled waterfall. Fine. But also there are bundles that are too small, that are petty. So I'm hoping that my books, my public speaking, the frameworks, and the 5 verbs will help teams right size this expectation factory. And so something you said about, embracing the constraints, but something you said made me want to jump back into the metaphor of flow, progression, momentum, a factory. And so this notion of a bundle, again, when it's too big, there's downsides for this, for bundles that are too big. And it's overhead and annoying when the bundles are too small. And so I think that teams would benefit from being more mindful about so instead of MVP, minimum viable product, I love the acronym NMV. What is the next most valuable bundle? And back to Neil's point on LinkedIn this morning is, if XYZ, and I won't name names, isn't asking is reliably asking the wrong questions. That was his statement. So then what is the right parade of questions? What are the optimal bundles, Q&A bundles that teams need to ask themselves, ask their customers, and answer to set expectations and shepherd this ruthlessly disciplined and gracefully empathetic expectation setting factory that doesn't need 30 verbs. You need 5.
Yeah, and I think there's this, what is it, SVO, subject, verb, object, and there's some kind of thing, SVO.P or something.
I love active voice over passive if you're tiptoeing into active voice.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But having an explicit agreement within our sphere of activity that these are the verbs, this is what the verbs mean, this is what is our language, this is our lingua franca for Megacorp, or this division of Megacorp, assuming that it's a shitty alpha structure. But yeah, I like that idea of, and this is the music too. This is, and it's music, it's food, it's dance, it's in the artistic domains of what medium are we in, right? If I'm a jazz player, I need to know, whatever half diminished scale, or I need to know my modes and 12 keys. I need to be able to play Falling Grace in these keys. I need to have a very expansive language and stylistic diversity of that, where in an orchestral environment, it's not, I need to have the facility and the technique, but I don't necessarily need to improvise over all 12 keys. But damn it, I need to be able to produce a beautiful tone on every one of those every time. Where in the jazz environment, my tone in general, I've got to be consistent with that. But there's some flexibility as opposed to rigidity in how beautiful my tone needs to be when I'm playing over 10 different changes and in giant steps in the wrong key, played in 7/8 as opposed to whatever. So,
and how forgiving your audience is.
And who the audience, who is that thing, who could even care to listen to giant steps in 7/8 played in the wrong key? And who cares? Who would know? Who is that music for? Who's it for? What's it for? Right? Orchestral music is for a certain group of people, and it's for something. People, whether it's status to go and experience it. Pop music as entertainment is also a different thing. There's so many different modalities in that you have, okay, so I'm going to produce a pretty standard chord structure, and I'm going to have lyrics and a vocal styling that you understand. I'm going to give you the sweet, sweet, sugary corn and syrup flavored citrus drink over and over and over, so that oh gosh, I love it. I'm not concerned about having an artistic experience where I'm challenged by, some kind of weird drink. But this is the venue. This is a style, venue, clientele that, and it's also the same with a restaurant. A 5-person sushi restaurant in Jiro dreams of sushi, right? He's in this tiny sushi restaurant in this Japanese airport. and he makes the best sushi you could imagine. But it's for people who know that place and people who want to go for the best sushi. It's not for someone who wants to have sushi at an Asian buffet in Cincinnati, Ohio, right? Totally, it's sushi, or maybe it's not. That's the kind of thing. I mean, this is, and innovation is more important in different environments. And there's excellence. That there's a level of excellence in Jiro. But there's maybe not a whole lot of improvisation. But at Nobu, this restaurant, there's a real need for innovation and a whole other set of maybe there's more than 5 verbs, or maybe the verbs are a different 5 verbs, a different kind of flavor of them. But yeah, I mean, I love the patterns that you're talking about. I think it's really, really nice to be able to maybe not stratify, because that has a hierarchical feeling to me, but to articulate, to enumerate them. So
in music, in the ensemble, it's interesting when there's dissonance, there's tension in the chord, and then you resolve the chord.
Yeah.
We have the same in our teams. We have divergent thinking, but at some point we need to have convergent thinking. A line of business, the insurance line of business might want blah, 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 and the public sector government line of business may want blah, blah, blah. But they have, so they're optimizing locally. No problem. Disagreeing is okay. Demonizing is not okay. And they have an umbrella who's optimizing globally, that person who is the built-in tiebreaker. And I'm hoping the 5 verbs embeds this micro escalation point, and always expect there to be dissonance, consonance, resolve the chord. And so another parallel with music for a customer experience or an employee experience is, in your favorite songs, there might be a stretch of 4 notes, 1 bar, 2 bars that are your favorite. It is the moment. It's the moment that matters. For some reason, the Star Wars music and I think it's called the Imperial March always comes to mind. So we're trying to do the same thing for our customers, for our employees, right? And this is, but back to your earlier question, is why do we innovate? It is to create moments that matter. It's being data driven, metrics that matter. Great. That I don't think that's at risk because it's such a popular, trendy topic. But I think what we can, again, it's another reminder of what we can learn, benefit, and profit from the performing arts, especially music, is creating the moments that matter. So again, I just wanted to add those 2 references to tie music back to innovation, teamwork.
Yeah. Oof. Moments that matter sounds like that's a real, creating moments that matter. And I think because it's acknowledging that what matters to the public sector consumers of software, that they deliver a consistent menu of services to people who consume public services, is the mattering is an entirely different thing. What may matter the most is a supreme level of consistency in what's delivered and how soon it's delivered, and what the metrics are of what does it take to produce at the BMV here in Ohio, which is fantastic compared to what it is in North Carolina, and bless their hearts in North Carolina and in the DMV, but it's just it is, but that matters less or what matters is so much different to a 5-person team in a 15-person company producing software. They're producing software that might change radically based on the market feedback they get. Twitter, perfect example. It was a podcasting. The folks who wrote Twitter in the originally, it was called Odeo or something. It was this podcasting platform that eventually, after they changed and thought what was going on, it changed into the microblogging thing that became Twitter. But we're not talking about generating insurance policies that create the level of safety and trust that an insurance company needs to be able to provide, or a public services organization. So yeah, it's knowing what those moments are, and what matters within those moments, and to whom. Who's it for? What's it for? What matters to those people? And do I care about them? Do we as a team who are working with each other, for each other, without someone telling us what to do? Are we listening to these people who we wish to serve? And are we creating the moments that matter for them?
Yeah. I don't know if you're aiming to wrap us up here, because I know we're at the 1 hour mark. But I'm reacting to your reference to consistency. I believe that many innovation teams experience an unacceptable number of negative surprises. So if we can have amazing consistency in our expectation flow, in our expectation factory, because we know that we free up our brain power to explore for positive surprises. So my hope is that my books and my public speaking can reduce the number of negative surprises in teams and increase the number of positive surprises. On a parallel contrast is all of us as innovation professionals. When we are creating a better customer experience or employee experience, we have a choice of what to prioritize. Some recent conversations I've been in, I felt the need to distinguish, hey, are we here to reduce the points of pain? So we're here to minimize the downside, or are what we are doing, is it more of a luxury good, a luxury experience where we're just trying to take average, a shrug of an experience, to eyebrow raising, okay, that was super cool. But I think there's value. Again, I understand if you don't like the word stratify, so maybe distinguish, but let's distinguish, like, when we are innovating, are we just making something less negative, less bad, and addressing
painful,
a point of
less harmful and painful? Yeah.
Right. Or are we creating an experience that really is about luxury, delight? I just think there's value in picking a lane.
Totally. Are you endeavoring to create convenience or significance? Right.
Yeah.
And that's and borrowing from Seth Godin. I borrow a lot from people that
pleasure or pain.
Yeah. Are we increasing pleasure? Are we reducing pain, suffering, harm? I don't like to do these with a hard stop, but if it feels like we're if you need to land at a certain place, that's cool.
I do not. I do not.
One thing we have maybe if I can get AI to chew this up and turn it into some clips and stuff, because I don't have the energy to do it. We have talked a lot about the 5 verbs, and I think I've alluded to the book, and I think it would be very important at this point to say, how do people get in touch with you? What do you like? How do you interact with people? What's the name of the book? Where can you buy it? And what are the 5 verbs again to put that together? Because I don't even think I could name them. I feel what they are.
I need to work on an acronym. With my two of my sisters-in-law, we spent a couple weeks trying to find an acronym for the 5 verbs, but we concluded it's best to just keep them the way they are. So the best way to find me, shocking, it's LinkedIn. And so the 2 books, so I finished 2 books. The third, I'm pausing. I just could use a break. And I'd like to, case study. I want to see how the first 2 books do in the market. So the first book is entitled Innovation Elegance, Transcending Agile with Ruthlessness and Grace. Because discipline on steroids is ruthlessness, and empathy on steroids is giving grace. So that's why I came up with that title. The second book is called Innovation Portfolio, 5 verbs shape your team's legacy. To steal a quote from W. Edwards Deming, I hope the 5 verbs are a small hinge that swing a large door of culture change. So you should be able to find the books anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you have local bookstores worldwide, they should be able to get the book. And I hope folks who prefer to not patronize Amazon or the other big booksellers, I hope you will try to get the book through the smaller shops. Absolutely.
From independent bookstore.
Yeah.
Do you have a website where people can purchase the book from you directly?
So not yet. I'm interested in doing that, but because it took me so long just to get the book in shape for a publication, I didn't want to boil the ocean and tackle that as well. But I think over the next few years, it's inevitable that a second edition will come out of these books as I receive feedback. I've already identified probably enough material changes and improvements that I could put out a second edition. But I'm not going to do that within 1 year, But at some point, I can see purchasing the book directly from my website, innovationelegance.com. Certainly, but not yet.
What are the 5 verbs? Tell people what the 5 verbs are, Robert.
So I'm gonna map them from the RACI matrix because one of the strengths of the methodology is that it welcomes you to opt out. But what's also easy is detecting that you have opted out and that you want your verbs to be all over the place.
Okay. So you're talking about. So let me put this. So I was imagining that you were saying some specific like.
There are 5 specific. I've been thoughtful about the word choice.
Okay. All right. So
yes.
Okay.
It's so the 5 verbs. So let me map it to the RACI matrix.
Okay. All right.
I don't think the 4 adjectives are doing you any favors. My strong conclusion about the RACI matrix is it is a false sense of governance. So instead of 4 adjectives, how about some verbs? And again, these agreements they have to reside in documentation because the right documentation qualifies as a love letter to your future team. Okay, so responsible becomes draft. Accountable in the RACI matrix, the A, accountable, becomes approve. C, consulted, becomes review and revise. And the I of the RACI matrix becomes distribute. All right, so those verbs are a little bit out of order. So if I put them in the right order, the right order is draft, review, revise, approve, distribute. Now, at my former employer, I did have a colleague who I, respect. He wanted the verb audit. I totally understood why, because the nature, we were working in sales compensation, and he wanted more oversight of certain things. So for about 3 days, I started standardizing the verb audit in all of our project plans until he realized, okay, we don't need, even if he's thinking audit, what's in the project plan, there's no need for this 6th verb. So every now and then, I will have a conversation with someone. They're like, no, I need a 6th verb. Okay. I mean, the purpose here is to minimize VUCA and shape this expectation factory. A RACI over the last couple decades, every now and then, someone will look at the RACI and they'll come up with a 5th letter. 6th letter, but it hasn't splintered into 20 adjectives. You don't have adjectives. You don't have adjective sprawl.
Yeah.
But you do in task lists and team task lists, which often are a public dumping ground of spontaneously conceived stuff.
Yeah. With also no consistency.
It's reinventing the wheel. You increase
redundancy. Yeah, I like that.
Hidden complexity in verbs like develop, distinguish, consult, determine. Which of that stuff is worth putting on paper? I'm going to claim, you know what? Either the work is worth putting on paper, governed by 5 verbs, or do it at the pub. Because you're taking a hard stance to say, no, this work, whatever we're doing, I don't want to draft it. I don't want to review and revise it. So if you reject the 5 verbs, then you would also reject the RACI. It's just a chat. Why even I'm not saying prohibit it. I'm just saying it's not worth the project plan.
Yeah.
Just don't govern it.
This is almost like, getting things done, like David Allen, something like that. I don't know if you're familiar with his work in terms of personal productivity. There's there's this idea of the 2-minute rule.
Mm.
If something takes less than 2 minutes to actually bring to completion, you don't have to document it or anything else.
Yeah.
It comes in and you blast it out, but there's a level of projects that you have that have beginning and end. There's a specific set of what are the components that would be super awesome when this thing is done, this definition of done or definition of God knows whatever. But yeah, so there's a level of, there's a stratification, or there's different granularities that have different rhythms to them and different. Yeah. So this stuff is half baked. This is not ready to be put in the oven and baked into a cake. We're talking about, we're still at the point where I don't know what to put in the damn mix. Is this a chocolate chip cookie, or is it a pudding cake, or is it wedding cake, or is it red velvet? What's it need to taste like? Who am I baking this cake for? Why am I baking this cake? And why should I even begin to do something to draft a recipe? There's value in work product and saying my raisins are this. Okay, so having a conversation produce something that's worthy to draft and put into the review process and to ingest into the process that you define, the factory. So what do you pop into the funnel at the top of the agreement factory, and what do you expect on the way out, so that you can produce something of value? Maybe the agreement factory at certain times needs to be tuned because the output you're getting isn't as consistent, or it's not creating the delight you want to create, or anything like that. So yeah. And
so can I respond to that?
Yeah, please. Sure.
For the last couple decades, there's been this term competitive advantage. Advantage. Every company wants a competitive advantage. We're a hyper-competitive society. I think we can check the box on competition. What would it mean to have a collaborative advantage where we could say, wow, we collaborate better than anyone else? My aim, my vision for the 5 verbs is that it creates a collaborative advantage for a team.
And because collaboration is, I think it's important to put a constraint around what kind of collaboration are you talking about? You're talking about intra-team within the 5 to 7 person cell, that there's this
so I don't dictate that. As an author and a public speaker, it's not, the boundaries of what I'm proposing. I think the 5 verbs are very scalable. Your team might be a family of 4.
Well, but the constraint, but the constraint is the organization. We're not talking about,
well, you might consult. You might consult with certain agreements. It's very possible you would consult. You would involve an upstream supplier, a downstream supplier. So again, or it could be a customer.
Okay. So I'll again, I know I'm kind of jumping back in, but the collaborative, there's if I am easy as an organization with operating within a certain sphere of influence, that there's a level of it to be easy to work with me to get what you want, customer. I want to be adaptable. I wanted to make it easy for you to contact me, easier for you to understand what I'm doing, easier for you to know what constraints I have, and so that I know what constraints you have. So maybe that's what you're talking about. How easy is it to work with Ryan Incorporated as a purveyor of services and products?
Is our friction all intelligent, thoughtful friction? Do we optimize healthy friction and minimize unhealthy friction? That's another. Yeah. I think we're saying just different term, right? Different term.
It's congruent. We have to come together on the right verb, right?
Right.
The right verb, a verb that we agree on. It is coming to agree. The right agreement is one that the folks who are involved with it agree upon.
Yeah,
So,
and when folks are skeptical of my verbs, I love to ask them, "What are your verbs? Are any of
yeah.
your verbs worth standardizing? Are they worth putting in a rhythm? Are they worth making a
Mm.
habit? Are you verbless?"
Are
So I hope a strength of
no,
the
are you
books
nonverbal? That's just which we would say.
is it's okay to opt out. It's easy to opt out. It's easy to detect who opts out, and it's easy to have them own opting
Mm.
out. So if you don't like the metaphor of a symphony, maybe you like the metaphor of karaoke. A symphony, an
Or
innovation, it's a team sport. Karaoke, solo sport. If you're more of a solo sport kind of person, you just need to own it.
yeah, and that maybe, yeah, if you're a great golfer, maybe playing in a basketball team is not for you. And
and
if
and and even within golf, if you're a jerk on the course and no one wants to be your caddy, no one wants to be in your foursome, well, again, there's still a sense of ensemble on the golf course, and you
Mhm.
need to have, um, so we haven't used the term HQ, hospitality quotient. I think that is a neglected
Mm.
term. I just gave someone yesterday that compliment. There's IQ, there's EQ, and a restaurateur, Danny Mayer. He started
Yeah,
Shake Shack and Gramercy Tavern
the
in
Union
Manhattan.
Restaurant Group or
Right,
something. Yeah, he's a great
right.
example of that.
His,
Yeah.
I think his exposure of the term HQ, hospitality quotient,
Mm.
that is a neglected term, and that is an example of a collaborative advantage. When a
Mm.
restaurant or any company is so hospitable to its employees and its customers, that is a collaborative advantage.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah.
that is the frontier of profitability. I do not believe the frontier of profitability is in hyper competition. I believe the frontier of profitability and value is in collaborating better than anyone else. And that's why
Mm.
I have such strong feelings for a new innovation methodology, because those software centric methodologies, they have limitations. I believe they've run their course. And that's why we talk VUCA, quiet quitting, fatigue, burnout. Um, no one asked those software centric methodologies to optimize teamwork.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I'm trying to do is optimize teamwork. And even if
Mm.
I'm wrong, Ryan, someone will take my ideas, they will build upon them, improve on them. So I'm hoping that I'm at least a huge stepping stone toward amazing, mind-blowing ensembles, teamwork.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'm with you there. We're traveling on the same route, I think.
Yeah.
And and it also, uh, there's a bifurcation too. I think that's happening. Um, and it felt like you were landing there, and I'm kind of lifting us off, or maybe this is a hint at what happens next, because I'm involved in a conversation with a group of agile coaches, and has say this thing that no such thing as an agile coach, right? And I am more and more getting to the point where I don't give two craps about agile coaching. I don't care about it so much. Just that's me. But the idea that a uh, there is more more that the work domain expertise and the ability to train in a practice, to be a trainer, to have uh, literacy, and have the ability to converse with technical specialists, right, in a software development team, in a software development team, which is where all this stuff came from. And we're talking in that environment, and that there has been an incursion of folks who have attempted to, with a lack of expertise in the domain, to soften and attempt to work on the individual flourishing, and this kind of the touchy feely stuff that that I'm all about. I have some ability to talk technically with folks, but what you and I are talking about is the magic that happens between people, this idea of the symphonic versus the traffic jam. I think you talked about that. I think that's real cool. That if it's there's a jazz thing, there's a restaurant thing, there's all these metaphors for easy communication, a language of love, a language of productivity that you're talking about. If we're using the same 5 verbs to talk about these kinds of things, then we can jam fast. We can make more elegant things. We can make more beauty and do it with grace and dignity and all that kind of good stuff. And so that is a skill to hone language and to not necessarily police it, but to observe it. And the question, I think, for folks like you and me who believe that's important is, how do we become professionals and show expertise and have authority in that domain and still get work in an environment where people are saying, folks who do this collaboration work, you aren't valuable because you're not producing software that generates money for me, and you're not making my developers produce a software I can sell faster, or a software that makes the mainframe run faster so I can build better. That when I hear this whole idea of agile coaching has been more towards professional coaching than it is really helping people make better software by doing it and helping others do it. Don't throw the baby out with bathwater, because this idea of human-to-human collaboration and individuals and teams coming together and working better together in ensemble with each other, for each other, having creative tension, having the ability, I'm going to hold you accountable, you're going to hold me accountable. We're going to execute these standards, and we're going to do it. You're going to come on stage with me and play drums with me. You got to come with chops, and I'll give you some, maybe you don't play this riff that I like in some way, but you got to come with something I can groove with as a bass player. And that's exactly the same with software teams and those kinds of. Certainly, it's important to understand what the notes are, what harmony is in a software development team, and to know the style and the domain, the work domain we're talking about. But it is still vitally important for people to be able to communicate with each other, to be expressive in their emotional capabilities and capacities as human beings, and to create wonder and surprise and awe and transcendent wordless beauty. And that doesn't always come by knowing how to program and run Python and work with Hadoop or God knows whatever that's important, because those are the notes. That's what's on the page. That's what you need, standards for coding. But it's important to have a language of love, that we don't talk about. And this is my little taboo that I want to bring in conversation, is that don't give up on love. And I think that's what that's the grace part, right? Elegant grace.
Yeah.
That's the style and flair.
I love to. Well, is it okay I jump in?
Go for it.
I think it's worth distinguishing love as a feeling and love as a decision. And in the workplace, empathy, love as a decision means you are lifting. You are making others better. That is servant leadership. That contrasts with just being a boss or a climber. There's a lot of blurring and confusion. That climbiership and leadership are the same thing. That's absolutely false.
Yeah.
When you think of a climber, where is their focus? Up the ladder, which means they're a great follower. Whether a climber is a good leader or not, that is mostly a completely separate question. So I think it's worthwhile to distinguish climbership and call it what it is, but it's not the same as leadership. Patrick Lencioni, I'm sure you know this quote. I think his favorite quote, my favorite quote of his is that, you know what, there are two, so take that back. But the quote is, at some point, we will not need to use the term servant leadership because it will be the only form of leadership. And that is another goal of my book, is to accelerate servant leadership without saying such.
And yeah, so leading, following leaders, followings, and that topic, I think there's another 10,000 books about it. And that, again, I think from the cohort that I travel with, there's real a pointed disagreement with that leaders and followers, that can be an abusive relationship, and that the idea of leading and following is not respectful of the human dignity of each individual. So leadership is what happens between people. Leadership is the agreements we have and the respect that we have in group with each other, for each other, to allow the idea of what it means to lead, to innovate, to put an idea out there, and to say, this is an idea, let's wrestle with this, and is this worthy of creating? Maybe that's leadership, whatever you call it. I'm not trying to drag you along. It's like, follow me, follower. No. That gets you into the whole kind of fascist, authoritarian, blah, 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 blah. But if you, and I think this is where the Beta Codex really speaks to me. It's about, okay, let's be specific about what you're talking about. That when you're talking about leadership, what are the verbs? Leadership is this. Are you talking about an adjective of like observable behavior? Okay, that happens between people, that this is how we're talking with customers. We're going somewhere, doing something for a purpose. Call it leadership, servant leadership, call it participative management. Yeah, who cares? What's your verb? What are we doing? Who are we? What are we doing this for? And to have that level of specificity, I don't give two craps about who's leading, who's following, what's managing. What is it? Management is not a group of people. There are a group of people who are managers who do things, those 5 things or whatever their verbs are. There are people, like leadership is not a group of people. There are top people with authority who have responsibilities to do certain things in certain ways. I think it's worthy of granularity and specificity and making distinctions about, we're talking about compliance, we're talking about influence, we're talking about value creation. All those are different kinds of, they're different verbs for those different behaviors. And maybe there's the core 5 are here and there's some other bits on it. And I think that's that leadership discussion. I think that's a great way to go, because I'll go, the musicianship is leadership.
Yeah,
in that realm.
So you are conveying to me, Ryan, that you are able and willing to combat VUCA.
I'll dance with it, man.
Because you're keen on reducing ambiguity. Clarity is empathy. Mm-hmm. And over the last couple of minutes, you have tiptoed into the world of dance, leader, follower, rejection. Be who your follower needs you to be. Right? As a leader on the dance floor, it is my job to be who my follower needs me to be. You also tiptoed into improv.
Who my partner needs me to be. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That in the world of the art of improv teaches us that all of us can and should lead, but just as long as our team needs our unique expertise, and then follow the follower. Step back. I love the phrase, bring a brick, not a cathedral, right? That is the essence of yes and. So I just wanted to give credit where you are tiptoeing into performing arts other than music. Because there just like music, there is a wealth of valuable culture traits in improv, partner dance, theater. You know this. Maybe that's a launching pad for another conversation with X combination of people. But and one more point about the skills of rejection, the ability to walk away. You didn't use the word toxic environment, but something you were saying reminded me of there are unhealthy environments and relationships out there, and to be able to educate and embolden people to walk away and to have alternatives, I think that is that's an under-discussed topic as well. Yeah. And the skill of rejection, because imagine a world where all of us are novices at giving and receiving rejection. That's a pretty bleak world. Imagine a world where all of us are very skilled at giving and receiving rejection. That's an amazing world to work and live in.
Sounds like honesty and courage and respect and
self-esteem and humility. Yeah.
And all of, I mean, and we can certainly come to agreement on a set of verbs and adjectives and what it means to be, to express the agency, to say no. No, I don't agree, and I'm not going to play this game. This is the 4-part game structure. This is a clear purpose. This is a set of rules and roles that we agree on. This is a way that we track progress, and that at the it's voluntary participation. If you got those 4 things, that game you're playing, whether it's music, gardening, whether it's making making a piece of software, whether it's whatever group work that happens live between people. You're playing together, you're playing a game. This dancing is that language of partnership and companionship is, it's beauty, and there's a place to name it when it doesn't happen and to build it. And then there's a point where you got to transcend that, and then just to be in partnership and to be what it feels like I'm taking the lead here, you're taking the lead there, we are, and that leadership and followership that happens so fast is it doesn't make sense to say, oh, I'm a leader now, you're a leader now. That's I don't want to watch that dance. I don't want to dance that dance.
Right.
Yeah, so that's great. And we're at an hour and 32 minutes.
Excellent.
And we're launching to another thing.
Yeah.
Robert, thank you so much. This has been delightful.
Yeah. Back at you.
I thank everyone who is out there and has listened and put a whole ton. Oh my gosh, there's a bunch of comments in here.
Oh.
That Ibrahima Kuruma, and Daniel Blaine's both in your audience, Robert, have put some stuff out there. I don't know who is still out there, but we can take a few moments if you want to look at some of the comments here and go for it.
So am I looking in LinkedIn?
I will. No, I'll show you a comment here.
I see Daniel's comment. I think agile should be organic.
Okay, let's do that. Daniel's was the last one.
Okay. But I don't see any other comment. I'm not seeing any other comment.
So I'll put them up on the screen here. Don't worry about it. They're in StreamYard on the side. If you want to take a look at them, you want to highlight them.
Okay.
We'll take Daniel's first.
Yeah. I think agile should be organic. Something that feels like the forced structure, which is ironic, right? That contradiction of agile versus forced, putting the bull into a panic, create chaos and So, Ryan, I have a response to that. Do you want to respond to that?
I think, force creating chaos. Absolutely. I am, as you might well imagine, all against force. I'm all for invitation versus imposition. And, organic, I think, is an interesting term I haven't used before, but go ahead and then we can talk.
So I'm going to give credit to Agile for one specific change that the Agile Manifesto accomplished. So in the mid and late 90s, the frequency, so innovation was lumpy. Go live events were far apart. projects were the exception, not the norm. And again, the frequency of go live events was low frequency. And what did Agile do? If there's one and only one variable that had changed, it's now our go live events have high frequency, right? Innovation is less the exception, it's more the norm. So that's awesome. That Agile has seen the risk, the downside of low frequency, lumpy innovation work. Great. But what Agile has not solved is high marginal cost.
Yeah.
Right. And that is meeting gridlock. It's email overload. So that's what I'm trying to do. If there's one and only one variable that I'm trying to shift, is saying to organizations that agree that they have high marginal cost and that they resemble communication traffic jams, I'm saying, let me show you how to reduce marginal cost. And it is absolutely analogous with taking a growing city and saying, you know what, if your marginal cost of commuting is unacceptable, there's a solution for that. It's called public transportation. It's buses, it's trains, it's more thoughtful intersections for cars, that sort of thing. So it's absolutely analogous. So Daniel is often engaged with me on LinkedIn. So I miss the man. We are former coworkers at my previous employer. But yeah, to his point that there's still forced structure, and there's a lot of chaos. Yeah, Agile is not solving chaos. It's not. It's not solving chaos. In fact, I would say that it is fueling franticness. It's about, because companies now are addicted to speed as a leading culture trait. And if you are addicted to speed as a leading culture trait, you're going to end up with traffic jams. If you want speed, that's great, but you must treat, every organization must treat speed as a lagging culture trait. What is upstream? What is the prerequisite? It is synchronization. If you are to achieve speed as an ensemble, you must be addicted to synchronization.
And you got to practice.
Yes, obsess. You must obsess, practice, and that is upfront cost. That shit is not free.
No.
Preparation is not free.
You got to do the work. You have to do the reading, as some people would say. You have to have this technical expertise, and it's all what we talked about, standards and all this kind of stuff.
You have to strive for muscle memory.
Yeah. And have muscle groups that you focus on. Cool.
Yeah.
Love that, Daniel. Who else do we have? We have Ibrahima.
Cool.
Let's see. Wow, he's got 3 there.
So stealing, I'm going to say stealing is a form of yes and. Bundling. Okay.
Yeah.
He is hinting at modularization. Love that. Tourism app, awesome. Love it.
Trying to find a way to do this here. Okay, so I'm going to leave his comment in here so where I can look at it and read. Do you want to riff on this one? Oof. Maybe Ibrahim can join in. If you want to join in, I can send you a link to come in the conversation. Often, and for your information, often what I like to do sometimes, that when we land, if there's people out there and they want to come in and jam with us, we can make that happen if ever that wants to happen. Oof. Let me go to Ibrahim's first comment. Maybe that'll help me focus. Oh, Robert left. Robert, sorry, Robert. We lost you. So okay, great notion of bundling when it comes to innovation. Okay. It's not really a question. That's a good statement. Yeah. Bundle what matters. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what to say to respond to that, but there are advantages and disadvantages to bundling large composed pieces of work as opposed to improvisational pieces of work. How's that go? And yeah. Okay. All right, Ibrahim, it sounds like we need to bring you into this conversation live for you to share that. Do we have any new comments? Yes, Daniel, great answers and explanations. All right, thank you very much. I think this is a clue for me to say, again, as I said probably 10 minutes ago, thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. I appreciate all of you who have, in this moment now, chosen to come here and spend time with Robert and I. And those of you who are in the future, when you see this, hear this, wherever you are and whenever you are, thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. I'll see you next time.